Hi, this video is looking how to fly through the EDUQAS Paper 1 reading paper, but a lot of it will be beneficial for all exam boards. So all resources and exam papers are available on the internet, but if you want to find them a bit quicker, go on bpcenglish.wordpress.com. Okay, so questions 2 and 4 on this exam are how questions. So this is when we're analysing the writer's method. So you'll see question number 2, it's how does the writer show Pat's feelings? That's 5 marks. And 10 mark one is how did the writer show Pat what Pat and Bruce think about each other? Okay, you'll notice it says use relevant subject terminology. Okay, and relevant subject terminology is things like this. So adjectives, verbs, verb choice, nouns, and so on. So it's expected in the exam you know what these are and you're going to comment on these. You're not going to get marked for just saying that's a verb. You've got to say the effect the verb has. So how many quotes do you need to use? So I would say basically whatever the mark is, you should look to write that many quotes. So there's a 5 mark question, so I would say look to 3 to 5 quotes, and it's a 10 mark question, 7 to 10 quotes. The exam board really like you using a lot of range, a lot of coverage, a lot of quotes. I would say if it's 5 mark, go for 5, it's 10 mark, go for 10 quotes. Okay, so like I said, you need to use a range of quotes, and that means quotes from the beginning, middle and end of the extract. So this is for each question. So this, although they've used quotes here, they've used it all from the top part of an extract. Try to space out. So basically you should be talking about a quote every couple of lines in your text. Okay, so in the how question you need to analyse the writer's use of language. So what does analyse mean? It basically means looking at something, examining it in detail and then explaining and interpreting it. So the question we've looked at previously, if you looked at other videos, a really typical question is how does the writer make these lines tense and dramatic? Okay, and then you would look in the extract for lines or things that you thought were tense and dramatic. So this is a previous exam, this is not the one we're looking at. So for example, this extract is about a man seeing someone get murdered down a mine. So he doesn't just say, had I seen a terrible thing. The use of the word witness is used, and we talked about that witness is a verb, and it almost suggests it's really bad because it's like a crime. Another thing we talked about was that another reason to be tense and dramatic was that the guy's job is carrying explosives, so it sounds like a dangerous job. So, putting that into a very simple sentence or paragraph, the writer uses a verb to create tension with witnessed, and then all I'm doing then is saying why the word witness has been used. So witness suggests something criminal has happened. So, if we look at the actual one we're doing, the question is how does the writer show you Pat's feelings about the flat in these lines? It says use relevant subject terminology and it's worth 5 marks. So have a read through and think to yourself and try to pick out words or phrases, one words, we really want short quotes, so try to pick out things that show you what Pat feels about the flat. So like I say, read through the extract and pause. Okay, in this question you're going to look for language that shows how Pat feels about the flat, and it's worth 5 marks, so we're going to be looking to use 5 quotes. However, in the 10 mark how question you really need to go into detail in your explanation saying what the writer suggests. My personal theory is that in the 5 mark question you don't need to go into too much detail on your explanation for the 5 mark question. So just say what Pat feels, say what quote you've used, and just say why you picked that quote. Okay, so if we look through the extract, how does the writer show Pat's feelings about the flat in these lines? So let's go through it. So straight away, she goes to the flat and it says that it was encouraging. So that shows that she's pleased that when she says hello to the guy. Then she says, I like the street, I like this part of town, it's central and it seems quiet. So really simply, that's just telling us that she likes a lot about the flat before she even goes in. Then the one thing she doesn't like is she sees the bookcase which is rickety. So the adjective rickety, that means like old, it's wobbly. Then she says she glanced with distaste at the sofa. So if you distaste means you don't like something. Then it says about the sofa that it was faded, so again that might show it's old. Then it says it was typical of sofas, that it was battered and humiliated. So these verbs, battered and humiliated, you almost say that the couch has suffered, like it suffered pain. Then it says the sofa had to change and ballpoint pens and loads of stuff down it. So you could say that it's so old, there's loads of stuff inside it that maybe it's a bit not a very nice thing to sit on. So if we put that in a really simple sentence for 1 mark, if we look at the adjective encouraging, a simple sentence could be the writer uses the adjective encouraging to show Pat is pleased with Bruce. So the question is how does the writer show Pat's feelings? So we're saying the adjective encouraging, what does that mean? What does encouraging mean? Well, it means it's pleased, so it's pleased to meet Bruce. So if we look at a few more, the writer uses the adjective encouraging to show Pat is pleased to meet Bruce. She uses dialogue to say she likes the street, the part of town, and it seems quiet. This suggests she likes a lot about the flat before she's even seen it. However, she uses the adjective rickety to describe the bookcase, which suggests she thinks it's old. She uses the noun distaste to show she thinks the sofa is horrible. She also thinks the sofa is battered and humiliated. These verbs suggest the sofa has suffered years of abuse. Yeah, so each one, okay, each one I'm just saying the type of word that's been used, the quote that's been used, and why the quote, what it tells me about Pat's feelings. And there it is on a word page. So question 4, okay, we're going to go back to question 3, but we're going to look at question 4 because it's another how question. This one is, how does the writer show what Pat and Bruce think about each other? Used relevant subject terminology. It's a 10 mark, so we're going to go for 10 quotes. So I would say with this question we want to go in a bit more detail. So one way is structure our answer this way. So the writer uses, then send the adjective and technique. So say for example we were talking about the word choke, we could say that was a verb and it's quite violent, so we could say the writer uses the violent verb to create tension, and then the quote, and then we say what the quote suggests. So the one we looked at a minute ago, with the man witnessing a crime, we could say the writer uses the verb to create tension with witnessed, and then all I'm saying is that why does witness create tension? Well, witness suggests something criminal has happened and that Obed can only stand and watch. So all I'm doing is saying why that verb, why that word witness, what are the connotations, why does that make it tense? So our question is, how does the writer show what Pat and Bruce think about each other in these lines? Use terminology. So you should be looking for language to show what they think each other. So pause the video, have a read, and see if you can pick out 9 or 10 things that you might think show what they think about each other. So here's my extract. So right at the top it says the room was not cheap and started the musty smell. So you might say there that Pat thinks that Bruce charges too much. Then it says you have got a job, haven't you? Bruce asked tentatively. So you could say that adverb shows that Bruce is nervous about looking at the rent. Then it says he relaxed. So the verb shows that Bruce relaxes when Pat says she's got a job. And then he says Pat smiled and continued to smile. So you could say that they both seem comfortable with each other and Bruce seemed fine. So don't need to explain that. Then he said that the Bruce reminds her of like a cousin, someone in their family, that these sort of men weren't very threatening. So you could say there that she feels safe. Those men are not moody. And then it says no matter how good looking he was. So this shows that Pat probably is attracted to Bruce. Then he says he was not sure about the new girl, so he could have said the new flatmate or new person, but girl suggests that probably Bruce sees her as a young girl, as immature. Then she says she wasn't going to be in any trouble, she could pay the rent. So all of this is very quite patronising and quite condescending. Maybe get the impression that Bruce thinks Pat's below her. Then he says the age gap could be crucial. So this word, this adjective crucial, might suggest that he thinks the age gap is such a big deal that it might be the do or die moment in their relationship. Then he said he decided Pat was not his type, and then he says that she's comfortable, undisturbing, average. So basically this is Bruce maybe saying that he doesn't think Pat is good enough for him. So we look at a couple of quotes and then see if you can do a couple on your own. So let's pick out not cheap. So the writer says the room is not cheap to suggest she thinks Bruce is charging her too much for the room. Next one, the writer uses the adverb tentatively to suggest Bruce feels anxious about asking Pat for the rent. So each one I'm saying the writer uses, then I'm using the technique, so for example adverb, then I'm using the quote tentatively, and then all I'm explaining there is what does that quote tell me about what they feel for each other. Well, it just feels, tentatively is nervous, it's anxious, so it's telling me that at that moment in the extract Bruce feels anxious about talking to Pat. So let's look at a few more. A good thing to do is, by the way, is go through the text. So every line, try to write something. So don't pick a quote from the bottom and then write that, then the middle, then the top. Try to go top to bottom. So let's look at a few more. So we've done these two. So the writer uses the verb relax to show Bruce feels at ease when Pat says she will pay in advance. They both smile, which suggests they are comfortable with each other. The writer tells us that Pink's Bruce seemed fine and reminded her of unthreatening cousin. The adjective unthreatening suggests she doesn't feel intimidated by Bruce. Pat describes him as good looking and the reader feels she's attracted to him despite her saying she wouldn't become involved with someone like that. The writer uses the noun girl to suggest Bruce sees her as immature and that he is in control. Bruce says the age gap might be a problem and crucial. This adjective suggests Bruce thinks the age gap might be the most important factor in a successful stay in the flat for Pat, although he could mean romantically. So even though she's saying that it's a problem, he might be talking about romantically as opposed to the flat. The writer uses short sentences of adjective to show Bruce doesn't think Pat is special enough for his attention. Comfortable, undisturbing, average. So that last one we didn't really talk about. So reflected means that you're sort of thinking about something. So we could say here that he's thinking about Pat as a potential girlfriend as well as a potential flatmate. So if you look at the ones we've done, all of these that we have here, all of these say what the writer has done. They've picked a quote out and then they've said why that quote, what does that tell us about what they think about each other. So all the way through here, I've asked you for 10 quotes. I've probably done 12 or 13 quotes. It's really important you get a lot of quotes in and explain why you've used them.